everybody. It's another episode of Important Work. I'm I'm John. I'm so used to saying co-host, but I'm your host in this show because it's my show, people. This show is about your important work and how do you go out into the world and make an impact. It's really designed for socially conscious and heart-centered entrepreneurs who want to make a bigger contribution to the world. So my guest today is John Israel from the Mr. Thank You Project. John, thanks for joining me on Important Work.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, it's great to get to know you. To name drop a little bit, we had an interview with Michael Mayer on his Referrals podcast, and you said something that really got me going, and this is why I reached out to you. You were talking about how when you started writing thank you notes, there was you noticed what it did for you, like the gratitude that started to well up in your own life, and I was like, man, that is so powerful. I think I've overlooked that for a lot of years, and so there's a huge impact that gratitude has. So that's why I reached out to you. I would love to hear kind of what your important work is in the world. How did you come across the Mr. Thank You Project? What's your background?
Yeah.
And all that. So
yeah, absolutely. So right now, so I'm an author and I speak a lot. I live in Dallas, Texas. So a lot of my speaking is more locally because I got a family. So I travel for some conferences, but we're really working on growing the impact of my work locally. Yeah. Which keeps me off of planes, which is nice.
Right. Yeah.
So the Mr. Thank You Project is a global mission to inspire 74 million thank you cards written around the world, which is effectively 1% of the world's population, which is a mission near and dear to me. And that kind of came out of an experience of desperation. I was really at a tough space in my life with my regular work, which was, I had been with the same company. I worked for the Cutco Cutlery Company for 16 years, and I was in the closing gift division. So I worked with businesses and helping them express gratitude with their clients and people they care about. And I was great at it. I was one of the best in the company, but I was at a tough stage of my life where I was really just working to work. We were preparing to buy our second home. We were preparing to move from California to Dallas, so a big move. My wife left her job, and we found out we were expecting our second child. Wow. So just a ton of stuff going on, very stressful. And suddenly my work, which went from this joyful thing I've been doing for a while, became this stressful, like I gotta work to produce an income to pay bills, which I just didn't like. And my wife didn't like it. So, I thought of, how can I change it? How can I transform that experience of work? And so I went on YouTube and did what a lot of us do. And I searched for inspiring videos.
Yeah.
And Simon Sinek's Start With Why talk came out. And that was just a really profound video. And the message was simple. I'm sure a lot of your audience members have heard it, but if they haven't, his message was, people don't care what you do. They care why you're doing it.
Right.
And business, they don't care what you sell. They care why you're selling it. So really, if you want to change, start with why. What's your purpose? And so I thought about what is my purpose in business? And if I was being honest, my purpose and my why was about survival, which, I don't think any client's going to be inspired, right? That's my why. They can feel that in our interactions. So I decided to find something and really discover, well, if I could pick a why, if I could find a reason to work really hard, what would it be? And then just the concept of gratitude came up because essentially I was a gratitude salesman. I help people say thank you for a living. So I wanted to find a way that I could embody gratitude as a daily habit, because not just being this thing I say like, oh, we're committed to elevating gratitude on the planet, like as a business, but to really say that and ask, how can I embody gratitude at a high level in my life so it's that I'm consistent with what I say my business is about. Yeah. And that's where we started with the idea of writing 5 thank you cards every day for 365 days in a row. Yeah. It started on October 8th, 2016, went for an entire year, and it just really blew up into this thing that I wasn't expecting, but it kind of is what I live right now.
Right. I think there's something that is interesting in this story because you were successful at the time. Like you're saying, like there was this survival thing, like my why was survival, but yet you were successful from the outside looking in, right? Like you were at the top of your company.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So this is what's interesting to me about important work. I think at some point when you've been there and done it in business and you're successful, like it's kind of like you played the game. Now you're like, now what? Like what's next? And you start reaching deeper for your purpose, your contribution. Like, how do I I'm not exactly sure what that's about. Like, what was that about for you? Was it about just enjoying life more? Was it about something legacy that you wanted to leave on the planet? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to make a difference in the world, right? Ever
yeah.
since being a college student, and one of the stories of really where this became an idea was when I was in college, and I got this. Um,
Mm.
I was in a biology class, and I had this teacher who was talking about it was a science class, and he was talking about the bodies of water in the world, and he said, there's trillions and trillions of gallons of water, and do you know how much energy it would take to elevate the temperature of all the bodies of water by 1 degree Celsius or Fahrenheit?
Mm.
And no one knew the answer. And his answer was a lot. It's going to take a lot of energy, more than any one fish, any one human, any one country can create. But what it is, it's really, and what he was getting at was global warming, and how collective neglect from humanity was really affecting the world in a negative way. And just that concept of changing something 1 degree or 1% really stuck with me. And it wasn't until later on when this project and idea came about where I thought of, well, that's a negative outlook, but what if something could have a positive impact on 1%? Or 1 degree. And that's where this, I wanted to find something that, what could I do that literally anyone can do? This doesn't have to be complicated. No one's changing their meal plan. You're not going on the gym, going to the gym 5 days a week. It's like, what's something simple everybody could do that actually works and makes a difference. And I've had some really profound experiences with thank you cards and with gratitude. And so that's kind of where the idea started, and kind of grew from there.
I love the idea that you could have some, I think this is, here's my thesis, or my hypothesis maybe even is that, people that have important work may have even been introduced to the idea of making a difference in as early back as college or high school or something. And then we get into life and we kind of go about doing life, trying to like finding our path until some point in the future, we encounter like, there's this moment where it's time to do something about that important work. Like we kind of carry the seed of important work all the way through life until we make this decision to go, this is the time to take that important work out to the world. And I that's true. That was true for me. I hear that in terms of your story where you had this idea in college and it wasn't like you forgot about it, or it wasn't like you didn't care about it, but it wasn't until later that you actually started the Mr. Thank You Project.
Yeah. And I think that there's, it's funny because now, when I get to do keynotes at conferences, people are like, oh my gosh, this is such a great idea. And they get like, oh, I'm trying to think of like what I want to do. And they get so caught up in trying to find an answer. And, for me, it wasn't ever like looking for an answer. It was just like seeking truth.
Yeah.
And what I see truth is like my truth of what I care about, because that's what matters to me. And that gratitude isn't necessarily the highest value for everyone else in the world. And that's okay. There's going to be something else that's important to you. But I think that's what matters, is that it's like this, you're kind of whittling things down until it starts to crystallize into what you're really clear, like, that is a thing. And you try something and it doesn't work, and you try something else and it doesn't work. And then eventually you find something like that. All of those ideas and experiences come together to make it that much more powerful.
So from my experience, a lot of times in the soul searching of purpose, there can be a lot of different options, choices, stimuli out there that you're like, so how did you start to find your truth in it all? Like, how did you understand, like, what were some of the signs or the clues or the things where you're like, oh, this is the right path?
Yeah. Great question. So there's 2 instances that really stuck out for me. And they were both right around college, which was interesting. So when I was 19 years old and I just started my job selling Cutco, I was, going house to house, just demonstrating kitchen knives and selling them to, stay-at-home moms and working people. It was just, it was my gig, and I was pretty good at it. And I remember sitting down with this woman named Cynthia, and I, did a demonstration for her. She was a really nice lady, and got to learn about her. She was a single mom. She had 2 kids who moved out of the house. They were getting on with their life, and it was a good presentation. She wound up buying a couple $100 worth of product, and I moved on to the next day. And what was really surprising was 24 hours after our appointment, Cynthia calls me to cancel her order. And I was really surprised. I'm like, why? Like, did I do something wrong? Did I say something wrong? And I didn't say that to her, but because she was pretty short with the conversation, but I couldn't stop thinking about that over and over as the next day or 2 went on. And then eventually, I don't know, Chris, I don't know why I did this, but I had this desire to reach back out to her.
Mm.
And so I did so with a thank you card. And so I grabbed some stationery off of my mom's desk and I just wrote a really simple note that said, dear Cynthia, I just wanted to say thank you for giving me the time to sit down with you and show you our awesome product. I know that right now is not the time for you to buy Cutco, and that's completely fine. But I just wanted to let you know how much I enjoyed getting to meet you as a person. I loved getting to hear about your boys. I loved getting to meet your parrot. She had a parrot she loved. It's kind of funny. I just really had a great time with you. And so if you ever need anything down the line, let me know. But otherwise, God bless and take care. And that was it. Just wrote this little simple note. And it was interesting because, Chris, as soon as I put that in the mail and sent it out, it was like all that stress, all those emotions, all those things that were there, they kind of dissolved and went away. It was just like a lot of relief. Like I'd let something go.
Yeah.
And so I forgot about it, moved on with my life, went back to school. And 2 years later, I get this random call. I remember I was in my college dorm room and I get this call from a random number back home. And I picked it up and she says, "Hey, is this Cutco John?" That's what everyone called me back then.
Yeah.
Cutco John. I said, "Yeah, this is Cutco John. How can I help you?" And she says, "You might not remember me, but my name is Cynthia Blackman. And I tried to buy some knives from you a couple years ago, but I had to cancel. Can I still place an order with you?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, of course. Yeah. Like, let's do this. How are you, by the way? I haven't heard from you in years."
Yeah.
And she's like, "I'm good. I'm ready to buy some Cutco." So I sat down with an order form and I just writing down everything she wanted. And she kept going and going and listing. It's like she's looking at the catalog and reading everything we make. And I was
Right.
really blown away because she was about to buy what was equivalent to 4 times her original order.
Wow.
It's like, why is this happening right now?
Hmm.
And then she, at the end of it, she says, "Do you know why I'm calling you right now, John?" I said, "I have no idea." She says, "Well, all those years ago, when I had to cancel my order, what I couldn't tell you was that I had just been diagnosed with cancer. And I was going to have to leave my job. And my boys who had moved out were going to have to move back in to kind of help take care of me as I went through treatment. And it wasn't that I didn't want to, but I just literally couldn't keep my order then. And I felt terrible, but then I got your letter in the mail and I just really felt like you thought of me, not as a customer, but as a human being. And I told myself when I get healthy, I'm going to call this kid and I'm going to buy every damn knife he's selling." And that's basically what she did. And it was this really powerful experience because I wasn't trying to elicit a reaction. I wasn't trying to do anything. I was just, it just felt right. And so that was this like moment that I always remembered, like there's value here for people to be acknowledged as human beings rather than just a customer. Yeah. And I really try to like keep that along with the rest of my, career. And, the second story, and I'll keep this a little shorter, was after I graduated college, but I was doing a lot of personal development and, I've done some work with Landmark Education, and they're kind of a global personal development company. And, I'd gone through a lot of their programs, and they're not really like Tony Robbins, big rah-rah. They're more like introspective, like think about your life and look at your actions and where you're at. And one of the things I really got out of that experience was looking at my life and all the challenges that I had and all the problems and the quote unquote bad things that happened to me, quote unquote, in my life. I always use them as an excuse of why life isn't working or why I'm a certain way because of that. And out of those programs, I really just got to see, that also all the good things in your life wouldn't be there if those things didn't happen. People you would have met, relationships you have, experiences you've had, you wouldn't have them without everything that happened in your life. So bring gratitude and joy to them because they had meaning. Right. And that really stuck with me. And I remember one day I was taking my girlfriend to the airport. She's my wife now, so it worked out. Early in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, normally a really stressful, annoying, like, oh gosh, drive someone to the airport at 5 in the morning. Right. And I was in a really good state, Chris. I was feeling really energetic and I was like really shocked. I'm like, why do I feel this way? I feel really good. I don't know why, but I need to write this down. I need to capture it. So I drove to the beach. We lived in Southern California at the time. And I started taking notes in my journal, and I just journaled for like an hour, and everything that came out was just like gratitude and appreciation for like the things that had happened in my life, but also the people involved. And I just felt this calling to really let people know what they meant to me. So I went home and I didn't write thank you cards, but I just sent emails and made phone calls. And I sent all these messages to people that mattered, like my old coaches and teachers and mentors. And it was like with every card I sent and every authentic expression of gratitude, my own level of gratitude just went up and up And then I started getting feedback, and people were calling me back or emailing me and saying, oh my gosh, like that made my day. And one of my English teachers from high school who really changed my life, she was like, this is why I do what I do, to hear back from students like this. So thank you so much.
Wow.
And I was literally at such a high in my life, such a great peak emotional state. I remember telling myself, Chris, if I could live like this every day, I could die happy.
Wow.
And that was like the second moment that I had this idea of like, okay, gratitude. If I could feel grateful every day somehow, that would be the life to live. Whatever I did, my job wouldn't matter at that point, because as long as I can feel that way, that's what I wanted. And then again, several years later, before that's when this whole project came up, and I just got really connected with like, yeah, gratitude does matter. But how can I make it a habit? How can I find a way to embody it every day in my life, to really kind of go back to that moment that I told myself, hey, if I could do this every day, if I could feel like this every day, I could die happy. And that's where they all kind of connected.
I love I hear a couple things in there. One is that a lot of times your important work is going to come from your life experiences. You just look back in life and look at the bright spots, look at the things that inspired you, worked for you, so that you can then find a way to share it out with others. And then I think, secondly, we could probably unpack this a little bit more, but once you sort of get the idea of the important work, like for you, gratitude, you're like, gratitude is a thing that it's a difference maker. How do I then put it into a project? How do I put it into a tangible thing that others can't, so that it's concrete, like people can touch it, play with it, do it, which is what turned into the Mr. Thank You Project, right?
Yeah.
No, I love that. So here's my first thought for those of you listening to this is if you're in the space of trying to find that important work, start to look for what are the themes that have really made a difference for you, because sometimes your important work lives in that space. And secondly, then start finding ways that you can make it more concrete. So maybe I can just ask you a question or two around that. Like, how did you then decide to make the project? Like, how did you turn this into something that you could scale?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one thing that was really important in doing this is because I did, out of watching that Simon Sinek video, I did create this concept of like, who I am is committed to elevating the level of gratitude on the planet. Right. So like that was the first underlying mission. And then there's this great quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, which goes like this, which is, I'm sorry, I cannot hear what you are saying, because who you are speaks so loudly.
Yeah.
And what I love about that quote is that it's like, it doesn't matter what you say, it's really who you are and how you act. So I was looking for what's an action I can take that's going to be an expression of this commitment I said I'm after. And so, but also, and this was the key, something not that just I could do,
right,
but that others could do as well. And that's where I was really looking for the simplicity of it. Yeah. And that's where I was like, thank you cards. I mean, you don't even need a piece of stationery. You could write it on your receipt when you at the end of a dinner. You could write them on a napkin. I've written them on all sorts of things. And so I thought like the ease of it is great. If I'm traveling somewhere, I could do it. It's right. It's like, oh, if you're committed to being in the gym, it's like, well, if I can't get to a gym, or, for me, it's like, if I don't, not at my desk, I can still write a thank you card anywhere. Yeah. So I wanted to be like ease of doing it, duplicatability, and then something that actually makes a difference. And so like I had the experience that this does make a difference. So for me, and what I decided was, okay, before I try to make this a big global movement, and because it didn't start with, let me inspire millions and millions of people. It started with, how do I inspire me? How do I become this entity that really embodies that value?
Do you listen to shows like this and think, I could totally do that? You have a longing to connect more genuinely with your community and have a platform where you can play a bigger game. But you never start because either the tech's overwhelming, or you don't want more work on your plate, or maybe you're not exactly sure what you would say. Yet you know you have really important things to share. This is why we created a done-for-you content marketing service, helping you give life to the conversations in your head to grow your business and your impact. Learn more at mygroundswell.com.
And so the 5 cards a day for 365 days was my model. Yep. And I did it intentionally, knowing that other people wouldn't do it, but that I would have a lot of experiences and stories such that other people, when they hear about it, might be like, well, dang, if that guy did 5, I'm not going to do 5, but I might do one, I might
Sure.
do two. And that's the thing, is that what happened is I wasn't even trying to really scale this. I was just committed to doing it.
Hmm.
And what happened is word got out, and it wound up getting picked up on some pretty big online blogs. And the next thing you know, I'm getting interviewed on the news, and like Fox News, ABC News.
Right.
And a lot of things really exploded. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I wasn't trying for this. And then I'm getting letters from people, and like, I started my own thank you project.
Yeah.
I've been writing 2 cards a day every day for the last 2 months, and, meeting people who are like, man, since I met you, I've written like 500 thank you cards. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
That's the, that was the long-term goal, but I didn't expect that to happen now. But it came out of doing something that was simple, that other people could do, that was scalable in a way that it actually had an effect. Like, it actually worked for people. Because if it's one thing if it's like, oh, they did it, but they didn't really get a result. But when you write a card, you feel different. Your state changes, and it can become a simple habit that doesn't take a long time. You can do one every day in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
everyone can do that. So it's one of those easy to do, easy not to do.
Yeah.
And then ultimately what we built with that, Chris, was our website, mrthankyou.com, which has, it's kind of cool. We have our global gratitude number, which is people who hear about this project and they start making gratitude a habit. We want to know about it. So they can go to mrthankyou.com, create a free profile, and then log the cards that they've written. And we give them their own global gratitude map to show, because they can actually put the zip codes of where they sent them. So it shows where all their gratitude has gone around the world. So and that's really our platform of where we're going to track it. Costs no money, and it took some of my money to make it. But ultimately, that's kind of where we're at with it. So it started with me.
Yeah.
But again, it's focusing on simple, like duplicatable, and and actually effective.
I'm curious your perspective. You may or may not have an actual thought on it, but here's what the question that's popping up for me is: how do you balance between the serendipity of like just doing the work, writing your notes, and then it gets picked up by a blog that had a lot of readers, and sort of like there's this influx of attention on what you were doing, versus or combined with really having like intention and wanting to push something out into the world? There's a balance in there somewhere. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
I think, and I can remember when because I remember getting just emails from people from all over the country that were family or friends or people that I knew, clients, and they're like, wow, why am I seeing my nephew on the news? Like, what just happened? Where? It was this kind of like, it's easy to be like, oh, well, yeah, this is, I'm great now. Right. Cause it's important. And yeah. And I was really fortunate to be like, hey, like, that's cool. That wasn't the goal right now. And I know that it's not right for me to go after that, which is really interesting, because some people look at what I'm doing now and it's like, did you give up on it? Have you stopped doing it? And because I've actually really cut back a lot of my travel around the country to do this, because to speak at events, because for me, it's really continuing to focus on, the internal, who am I really connected with, that my story, my message hits. So yeah, we still get national publicity once in a while, but the goal is still to really, now I'm working on my localized community in the city of Dallas, which is still pretty big. It's like some bigger than some states out here.
Yeah.
So
right.
And I think that's where, if you can just remind yourself, like, what is the goal? There's this really great picture. I wish I could, show it to everybody, but there's this concept of, and I think you've gotten this before from, I think you said you've done some landmark work, but there's this concept that they shared, which I loved, which is that, like, just imagine like multiple circles kind of like surrounding each other. And inside the first circle, it just says self. And this is like levels of importance and levels of impact. And it's like the first thing to focus on impacting is yourself. And then the next circle around that says family. And that's really like who you are as a being gets to impact your family, because that's who you see and talk to the most. And that's different for different people, depending on if you're married and have kids or whatever. But the family is the next. Yeah. And then outside of family is community. And that's people who are like, where you live, or it could be your work or whatever. And communities can scale around the country, really. Right. But community is the next one. And then it goes to society, and then country, and then world. And that's really, if you look at how do you change the world, you don't try to go jump out to the world and change it. You just kind of start where you're at, and you work on really becoming the person that you want others to be. It's like that Gandhi quote, right? Be the change you wish to see in the world. Well, that's what it looks like. And so for me, we've had this great opportunity to scale pretty quickly, but we're actually pulling back from that, because we want to develop stronger roots with what we're doing, so that when we get to that point of scale, when we get to that place where, we're invited on Oprah or some, bigger shows or whatever, that there's this like, yeah, and it's right. It seems right now because we've done the work, we've taken the time.
Yeah.
So I think, and there's a great book I'm sure you've heard or recommended, but it's called Deep Work. By, I'm trying to remember the author's name.
I haven't read it. I have heard of it.
Cal Newport. Great book, and it just talks about the concept of how do you create something that's really worthwhile that you're proud of. And he just talks about doing the deep work and turning off your phone and just really focusing on that thing that you care about. And so for me, I think I just had a sense of that I'm like, yeah, that's going to come, and I know it's going to go. It's going to go because it's news, and news is exciting one day. And here, okay, this was the thing that was a great litmus test of when I realized this was a short-term thing with like the national news. I was on somehow like the story wound up on like iHeartRadio, some station, and my friends were like, "Oh, hey, I just heard about you on iHeartRadio," and I looked it up online and I listened to it, and it was literally like, "And 75 people were killed in a terrorist attack. Up next, we got Mr. Thank You, who's going to be talking about how thank you cards have really impacted the world." And I heard that recording. I'm like, this is just a story like sandwiched between garbage, right? Like it was a thing that they needed to fill some space and time. So I'm not going to make it mean anything but what it is, just an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think that was just also, that was a really good thing that I was like, okay, I'm not going to make this mean too much.
That's super interesting. Cause I think I'm still super present to, I don't know, maybe it's not the old self, but the striving, the reaching, the growing, the things we try to do to force the intention to go, to take off. And, as I've gotten into more and more content marketing, you can really, if you peek behind the curtain, you can really see how a lot of stuff is played, like how the game is played. And there's people are trying to find sound bites and get attention. And a lot of times, like you said, like people are taking the heart of something, which is really good, and they're just looking for a soundbite to squeeze between trash. Like that's a lot of times how content marketing is played. They're like, well, what soundbite can we throw that's going to give us some engagement and a spike in likes which I think bastardizes the whole heart of important work. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah. There's it's funny because after I'd finished my year, right? So I made it through 365 days of the Mr. Thank You project. And I'd finished and I was like, wow, like, what now? And I'd started writing the book and the book's out now and a lot of good things there. But it was also this kind of like, oh, I remember not needing to write cards the next day. Like it was literally a glorious feeling. I was like, I can like relax. Like I don't have to write cards today. Yeah. I took like a week off. I was like, no cards. Right. Yeah. And I still do write them. I don't write 5 every day, but I still do write a decent amount of thank you cards. And I really focus on when it's important, when I think it matters, when it's going to make a difference. Yeah. And, I had a business coach that I worked with at the time. And one of the things that because he helped me with, helping design it and putting the rules in place and, making sure I honored it throughout the year. And one of the things that he asked me is he said, so let me ask you this, moving forward, how will people know that you are Mr. Thank You without you ever writing them a thank you card or hearing about you on TV?
How do you answer that?
I didn't have an answer. He's like, you might not even have an answer yet, but I want you just to consider, how do you continue to embody this commitment you said you made of elevating gratitude on the planet and continuing to be Mr. Thank You without having to tell people, oh, I'm Mr. Thank You, by the way, just in case you really want right? Yeah. So, and so it was, so here, and I didn't share this with you on the Michael Mayer podcast. This is actually a really cool experience that happened. We have a mutual friend, Hal Elrod, who is founder of the Miracle Morning. And he's also a good buddy of mine, used to sell Cutco and I'm pretty involved. We're in the similar communities. And he was actually having me come to his event, Best Year Ever Blueprint, to share my story about the Mr. Thank You project. And Hal had actually just finished all of his chemo treatment for cancer, and he went through some serious health issues with cancer and came out on top, and we were so grateful for that. And he had this huge community that was behind him. And I remember, I was sharing some of my stories of the Mr. Thank You project with people at the event, just some friends of ours, and they're like, "Wow, that'd be so cool if we could do something like that for Hal." And I was like, "Yeah, wonder if we could." And so then I orchestrated with his assistant this whole idea of, again, how do you be this person without having to say you're this person, right?
Yeah.
And so I just thought of like, how can I, and the concept behind what I do is about honoring and respecting people for who they are and their greatest contributions. So I had this idea, and I shared it with Hal's personal assistant, and we pulled this thing off at his event. And I said, what if we can get every audience member here at the conference, like 300 to 400 people, to write thank you cards to not just Hal, right? But to Hal, because his family was there, his wife, his mom, his dad, his kids were all at the conference. I said, what if we could not just write a card to Hal, but write cards to the different members of his family, it really appreciating them and acknowledging them for supporting Hal throughout this year. And we printed out this piece of paper with some thank you cards. We put them on every chair in the entire auditorium where the conference was going on, literally right in front of Hal. Like he had stepped out because there was a break, and we made all this happen. And, wow. And on top of that, we had them personally send a text message with their marketing stuff to all the attendees, and taking Hal off of the text thread and just letting them know, hey, we're doing this, have this, please turn these in tomorrow. And so, the next day we had, 500-600 thank you cards turned in, and we had them separated by, Hal, his wife, and his mom and his dad. And then, so we had this next level thing. We're like, wow, that's pretty cool, but how do we really reveal this? John Berghoff is his partner, and John was interviewing me on stage. And so we queued this up, like this is totally planned, but it was really cool, where he said, what's next for you, John? Like, what's next for Mr. Thank You? And I said, really, we want to work on these communal gratitude experiences where we get communities together to express gratitude to people who matter in their life. And then we planted someone in the audience to raise their hand at that moment and to say, actually, I have a thank you card I would like to read right now. And so then they stood up and they actually read a card that they wrote to Hal's dad, and just expressing how hard it must have been as a father to see your son go through chemo, and because his dad really was a big part of it, like left his job, basically moved to Houston to help him go through all the treatments for like 6 months. It was crazy. Yeah. And so like this guy, random dad just honored Hal's dad right in front of this entire audience, and everyone's crying and it's crazy, and gives him a hug, and that was great. Right. And then we had another person raise their hand like, oh, I have a card I want to read too. And this one read a card to Hal's mom. And then Hal's mom unfortunately had to leave early from that event, but Hal accepted it, and again, more applause, more tears. And then the last one, we had Hal's best friend stand up and read 2 cards, one to Hal's wife and one to Hal. And I mean, it was like such a powerful experience to see Hal be honored in front of the community that really cares about him. But it wasn't just that, it was everybody got to be a part of it. Yeah. And then after, Hal's buddy did that, I mean, it was really amazing. Then I invited Hal and his family up on stage, and I presented each of them with a stack of cards, handwritten from everyone in the audience. And it was just, it was just this really powerful experience that, again, not looking to get anything out of it, but really like Hal's a friend. And I wanted to try and find a way, how can I take this to the next level? How can I really prove that I'm embodying this commitment? Right. And, from that experience, someone in the audience is also an organizer for TEDx conferences. And they reached out to me and they said, hey, can we get you on one of our TED stages? I'm like, really? Like, I thought you had to apply for these things. Like you're about to ask me to do this. And then I was getting on podcasts and getting invited to other events to speak. And I'm like, wow, this is, again, it's one of those things, not trying to, but just really trying to embody my highest value. And I think that's really the hard part, is because we get caught up in like, how can I make this big? Because we see a video and it's like, oh my gosh, that's got 47 million views, and oh, this, and it's got 75 million views. And, none of my videos have had more than a couple thousand views. And I'm okay with that, because what I do know is that when people meet me, as close or as far away, so it could be someone who is in my family, because everyone in my family got a card. It could be anyone in my recent community, my closer communities. And then just to, like, for example, today I spoke at a church to a women's group. And one of the things I have the audience members do is I have them write a card to somebody. And I got to, while they were doing it, I wrote a card to the organizer of the event. And before I wrapped up, I read the card out loud in front of all the women to that person who organized this whole experience. And it was just this thing that's like, I don't need to tell you who I am. Like, you just get to feel it based on your experience with me, because of how I live my life. And I think that's what's important. And now that sounds kind of big, and it's like, man, I don't know if I care about something that deeply. Well, and that's okay. And I think what it is just continuing to search for your truth, what you care about, and finding a way, how can I bring this into my business, even in a small, simple way that I can do every day, that I can feel good about, that I can start continuing to take it to the next level and the next level and the next level.
That's it. I love it. I think that's kind of a great place to wrap. I think no matter where you are listening to this, to your point, John, like you guys listening to this might be at the top of your company, the top of your career, the top of your industry, and there's something stirring in your soul. There's something what I've learned about important work is that it's hard to pinpoint where it comes from, but you know that it's bigger than you, and you know that you can't ignore it. Like it just keeps coming back to you. And so you have to get it out. And I think what's so inspiring about your story, John, is I love this thing about just being it. And when you just be it, it's all of a sudden like all the game of it all and the results of it all isn't what's important. Like the being of it is what's important, and the results will come, but it's the being of it that actually goes out into self, family, community, society, the nation, the world. Like that is how you spread important work, is by being it, being the change you want to see in the world. And then I think the world sees that as different and unique because it feels authentic. It feels true rather than it feels like you're trying to make something happen.
Yeah. And then one last point, because I think this is actually really important based on the last question you asked, which is in that time, like that maturation period, as you start your project or your important work, it's just like a plant. Like you're rooting yourself to the ground. Yeah. It's like, I stand for this. This is what I believe. And the more time you take doing that, the more time you spend on your important work, the deeper your roots go. And that's where I think it can be the slippery slope of, you get some publicity, you get whatever, and then it's like, oh, I'm great, and if you think you're bigger than you are. And then what happens is that goes away. And if your roots aren't deep and the wind comes and you don't get the promotion or you don't get the publicity like you're hoping, like you did that one time, you just push you over.
That's so
like
good.
A tree with shallow roots. Yeah. And that's a great view of what I would say. Like, when you're looking for yourself, like, don't be worried that this needs to happen this month, next week, this quarter, this year. I mean, just commit to, just find something you care about that you can be aligned with for, I hate to say be aligned with your life, but just honors your values. Yep. I think that's a good pace to stick.
I love it. Well, thanks for being on the show, John. If people want to learn more about the Mr. Thank You Project or connect with you, like, what's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, for sure. So number one, the book is available on Amazon. So there's lots more stories and experiences you can learn about, especially for business people. I do have a section in the book called the ROI of gratitude. So the return on investment of making gratitude a habit in your life and in your business process. That's good. That's a good thing to check out. But you can find me on Instagram at the Mr. Thank You. You can find me on Facebook at the Mr. Thank You as well. Nice. And then you can also check me out through my website, mrthankyou.com. And I always like to have a little giveaway too. So if you're curious about what is how to write a legendary thank you note, I have this cool 30-day challenge, which has some examples of cards that you can write, and just go to mrthankyou.com/3030. And that'll help you out there.
I love it. So good. John, thank you. If you guys listening to this are in the middle of your important work, you're trying to figure out, how do I get my important work out in the world? Like, this is what we do. Like, at my company, Groundswell, we actually produce web shows like this to help you promote and spread your important work and your message in the world. So if you guys want to know more about that, you can go to groundswellagency.com and learn more about that. John, thanks again for being on the show today. And I look forward to seeing all the success and the work that Mr. Thank You is doing in the world. See ya.
Thanks, Chris.
Do you have important work in the world? We can help you produce a show just like this one and get your message out in the world. Go to mygroundswell.com to connect with us now.